Welcome back. We're here reviewing movies. I'm joined once again by the great KB. Thanks so much for being here.
Man, thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to chat about this one and
We're
get your thoughts
talking,
on the previous ones.
we're doing Wake Up Dead Man, the third Knives Out movie. I was wondering, what's your history with these? Have you been like a Benoit Blanc fan this whole time? Where have you
You know
been?
what I have actually? I find that Daniel Craig with the Bond films, they're always so serious, right? Like
Hmm.
every Bond film, it's like, let's do X, Y, and Z, and there's so much stunt work, and the storylines are quite heavy comparatively. And so, what I do love about the Knives Out series is just how much fun it seems like he's having. Just the opportunity to just do something utterly ridiculous, like to step into Benoit's shoes, have this incredibly complex accent, which I'm not sure you thought that's what
If it's regionally specific or
right,
anything. Yeah.
right. So to just have fun kind of with the accent and also to be able to play with a lot of different actors every single time. Also to the point where like every actor is like, "Oh, I want to come back." And Ryan's very much like, "No, like that's not the point."
Right. Right.
Which I love, but he's like, "That's actually not the point." Like I'm collecting actors on this journey. So, yeah, I've had fun with them. What about you?
I have also kind of been there from the beginning. Deepak on our team is a big fan of um, seeing Daniel Craig on a movie screen. I would say so. We sort of have kind of jumped on any of those opportunities. He was joking when we were doing the news last night, and he was saying, of course, now we're entering the phase of Knives Out where Daniel Craig is going to, protest making all of these and talk about how he'd rather slit his wrists than go into another parlor room with Ryan Johnson or whatever, just because Craig has to be a diva. But I think you're probably right. I think these are probably easier. I think James Bond really took a toll on him, and I'm excited to get like as many of these as well. I would have also loved to get as many of like the James Bond, Daniel Craig movies as we could have gotten. I really enjoyed those, but these, I feel like everybody seems like they're having, like you say, everybody's having a fun time. Nobody's threatening to quit a franchise because they just can't, carry the weight of this thing anymore. It seems like everybody shows up, they have fun, they do a little mystery in a cute setting. Um, and I've had a lot of fun with it. The one thing that's driving me insane, and I'm noticing that this is a trend that we might need to bail on. I was okay when it was really just Daniel Craig as kind of the lone Brit doing a weirdly specific American accent,
Mhm.
but we'll talk about all of the cast and everybody. We like Andrew Scott being in this movie was like three or four different ways of confusing for me. Other British people also being American when Daniel Craig is doing his weird, like over the top, sort of faux Cajun accent. My brain starts tracking it in all these weird, confusing ways. And then we had a different hot priest, which was equally confusing for me, who was not Andrew Scott. So the cast of this one I think was confusing me more than the previous ones have, but I always have a fun time with them. And I really thought this one was like quality wise, maybe a high bar. I mean, we'll talk about it a little bit, but some of the like thematic stuff that was happening in this movie, I felt was kind of heavy and like handled with like a light touch.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean, I
know.
do think that this one was also a bit more political
Yeah.
and a bit more forward in the sense of like everyone, when I saw it, I actually saw this at TIFF. And it was interesting because I went to a press conference, with Ryan and the cast. And Ryan said, he was a big fan of Heretic, which I was too. I mean, I think
Hmm.
that Heretic was a fantastic film. So it's also just kind of a little bit of having those political moments in it, particularly with Psy's character, right? Because he
Hmm.
wants to be in politics so bad, but he is like the most, I mean, he's like essentially a mockery of our entire political system
Right.
wrapped up all into one. So he is, kind of doing his best. And I think Daryl kind of pulls that off, kind of being this complicated idiot who thinks he can do any and all things. Yeah, as a politician, I think Ryan really nails that on the head. But I do think from the religious aspects, there's a lot going into it, just dealing with death, grief, guilt, murder. There's a lot of themes kind of woven throughout this one for sure.
It, I think the politics of it are so interesting. I really found myself kind of like realizing how if that I don't think this will be the end of the Knives Out movies. I think Netflix seems very happy to keep spending more money on them, and I think Ryan Johnson seems like he's having a fun time making them. But if they were to end tomorrow, right, and this was the last one we got, I had found myself sort of thinking about how they would be an interesting, like, commentary on, like, our time in the Trump era, right? Where we
Mm,
started with Knives Out, which was so much about, like, immigration and the role of immigrants in our society and sort of the lip service that certain folks pay to the idea of immigration versus, like, what actually, living side by side with certain people looks like in your life and whether or not people are, willing to, like, walk the walk rather than talk the talk, right? Like, that's largely what I felt like one of the big undercurrents of Knives Out was. And then the second one, Glass Onion, right, being so much about, like, the muskification, like, of our entire society, right, and this sort of, like, veneration of, like, quote unquote genius, even if
mm,
it doesn't, like, actually produce results or, like, better anyone's lives or change the world in favor of anybody, but, like, we just venerate this, like, the guy who has a certain type of idea, right? A certain type of guy who has a certain type of idea is, like, important in big air quotes in society.
mm.
And now this one, right, just fully embracing the idea of, like, a cult of personality where the person is the only thing that matters, right? I think there's even a line at one point where it might be Andrew Scott says, like, "We are behind you, and nothing you can do or say could
It's
possibly
not
change
right,
that."
right, right.
And
It's literally like after the big revelation of
yes,
Psy.
of everything that's happened and all the everything's kind of
And then
coming
he's
out.
like, "You know what? It doesn't even matter. Do we even know who this woman is?" Like,
Right.
and that's like Jeremy Renner's character as Dr. Nat. He's like, "Do we even know who she is?
Yeah,
It doesn't matter. Like,
doesn't
we're
matter.
standing by you, regardless of what's been said about you, or regardless of what you are currently admitting to. It doesn't matter. We'll stick by your side." But I think it's interesting too because in the second one, obviously, like it pokes fun a bit at this billionaire complex that we are living in this simulation too. You're right. This guy with this quote unquote big idea, but making all of this money, off the backs of his employees, and doing the most insane things. Yeah, so I think that it's interesting that Ryan is really using these films as really like a window into our current kind of landscape.
I think so too. And I recognize that I'm on shaky ground in what I'm about to do in speaking positively about the film The Last Jedi on the internet, but I really loved The Last Jedi. I mean, m my wife makes fun of me to this day that the lights went up on Last Jedi, and I turned to her and I said, "That's the best Star Wars movie." And I think my feelings may have come down just a little bit since then, but I really love that movie. And one of the things that I thought was so great about, Wake Up Dead Man and, like, the sort of what you were talking about, the themes of obligation and religion and where you put your faith and how you define yourself based on where you put your faith. A lot of that stuff felt like sort of what he was trying to get at in Last Jedi for me. It was just like maybe in a place that was a little less charged, maybe in a room where hopefully some people would be more open to hearing it. Maybe if Luke Skywalker is the one telling you you've put your faith in the wrong place, maybe a
And
certain.
maybe a little less obvious than this film for sure.
Yes, yeah, yeah. This one is very on the nose. We are talking about, traditional religious structures. But I mean, we should talk about the cast. I mean, everybody I thought was really great. I thought Josh O'Connor and Glenn Close were especially fantastic. But let's run. I mean, as you said, one of the great things about these movies is we get these sort of star-studded casts, and oftentimes people do really great performances. Where would you like to begin in just talking about the members of the small church community at the heart of Wake Up Dead Man?
So I will say that whether or not, because there's a lot of conversation around Glenn Close right now, currently, and the choices that
Hmm.
she's been making. I'd say within the last year and a half, because remember, she has been in a bunch of films. She's in All's Fair on Hulu right now. So a lot of people who have been, fans of Glenn Close and her acting for decades have questioned
Right.
kind of these new projects that she's been in. I think that she's great in this film. I will say though, at one point I was like, Martha, we need you to stop screaming. Like there is no scenario in which I need to hear you scream again. Like, like
Yes.
she screamed so loudly, and so at like the most random moments of the film, I was like, okay, enough. Like we get it. Martha is over the top in
Going for
every
it. Yeah.
right. I was like, my gosh. But I do think that she's great, and I do think that like her relationship with Josh's character is kind of I think the most fun to play with specifically on in this film. And I think it's just because she hates him so much because he hates Monsieur Jefferson. Like, because they don't gel, because they don't get along, it like drives her insane because again, she is a Monsieur Jefferson apologist, at all costs. And so it's so interesting. Their dynamic, I think, is the most fun, but it's also funny because there are a lot of subtleties and a lot of nuances between the two of them. And I really found myself thinking, like, in this film, how much of their performances are really ad-libbed and just them just kind of being like, let's just see how far we can take it between these two characters. So I actually really, really like their dynamic. I said it like a little bit briefly, but I like what Daryl does as Cy because it's also so over the top. And I think that's why actors kind of sign up for these Knives Out films, is that you can really go for it. And in a lot of ways, it is very theatrical, and I mean it like from a Broadway standpoint almost.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
you're doing your best, you're going full out every time, every scene. You're kind of just bringing the whimsy, the ridiculous, the caricature versions of these people. And that's why, Daniel Craig's accent is such a hot topic in
Yeah.
here, right? Because he
Right.
is just kind of doing whatever he wants to do. And honestly, it sounds like it changes a little bit every film, but I don't hate it. Like, I'm like, you know
No.
what? Have a good time, Benoit, do what you need to do. So I found that like those are probably like my favorite character performances. I'd say like my top character performances. I mean, obviously, like Mila Kunis is in this as the chief. She comes a bit later in the film, but you can still tell that she's having a good time, but she just is not in it as much as everyone else, right?
She's a
Carrie Watt,
great entrance. I
right,
really value
right.
that. Yeah.
Right. Kerry Washington, I think, will always shine. And, I will say that it feels like her storyline is a bit heavier than everyone else's in some ways because she is quite literally carrying Cy on her back and has been. And there's like a lot of truths that are revealed that really are disappointing for her because she has put a lot of her faith in, these two men specifically, and they let her down consistently every time, right? So I feel like she is kind of dealing with the weight of that. So that's interesting. And then really, Thomas Hayden Church, Samson would go through fire for Martha. I mean, that's what
Yes.
we see. But like, other than that, that's all he's really doing is following Martha.
He's just out here doing it. He's drinking his soda, watching his
Yeah,
game.
yeah,
If somebody needs him, he's around.
right.
Um, I thought the Kerry Washington performance was so interesting because you're absolutely right that like I mean you can give her anything and she'll light it on fire, right? She's just one of those performers that like is so good all the time, and I'm always so excited to see in like a thing like this, right? That is going to have a budget and support and like promotion, and people are going to be going. Everybody's going to be wanting everyone who can to see. Netflix will be pointing everyone they can towards Wake Up Dead Man, and sometimes Kerry Washington has given really great performances in lesser seen movies, so I think it's really exciting. I'll say, a little bit like having what was it, Broomhilda syndrome with this character a little bit, where I was like, I feel like she's been like the character that Kerry Washington was playing. I can't remember the name. I can never remember the name of any of the characters in these Knives Out movies, but the Kerry Washington character was
She
sort of
is. She's Vera. She's Vera.
Vera. Thank you. Was sort of thematically within the story the same character as Grace, right? The mother of Josh Brolin's character, right? Like they had been sort of been given these similar like crosses to carry. They had kind of been deceived in similar ways by their fathers, and they had been like kind of set up for systematic failure and like thrown, kind of cast out or like looked over because of their role as women in their family units. And she has one really great speech where she like lays that out and like explains that, and I was like, hell yes, this is what I wanted. But like
Mhm.
I could have had like two or three scenes of that with her, and I felt like she had one where I like really got to pump my fists, but I could have had a little bit more of her on the camera, in my opinion. But that's just, I'm always,
Yeah.
always gonna
You
say
know
that.
what? I agree. And I think it's interesting that you point out because it is true. I think the entire through line of this film is really the sins of the father, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's like fully generationally, it comes through in a multitude of ways. It even impacts Martha, even though he's not her biological father, right? And then when you say the sins of the father as well, because they are set in this church, it also kind of leans into the sins of God, right? Like
Right.
for them and how that impacts every last one of them. So it is interesting.
And I think that, a lot of those themes do go back to what Josh O'Connor is doing in the movie. And I thought he, you mentioned him, but was such a nice pairing against Craig. Mila Kunis and Josh O'Connor sort of get to take turns being the counter to Craig in this movie, whereas in the past he sort of had one Watson following him along in these adventures. This time he had two. I thought they were both good energy pairs for him, and as you say, as he kind of lets this character get older and weirder, it's fun to see him have a wider range of people to act against.
Yeah, you're right. And I do think that like it is a little bit more interesting making of a choice, making Mila be the chief of
Mm-hmm.
police in this
Mm-hmm.
too. I mean, I think just because obviously her and Benoit have very different styles when it comes to solving murders. And so it's interesting to see them, yeah, kind of play off of each other because they are not aligned. I mean, I think that's the best way to put it. And it's funny because, Josh's character is just so riddled with guilt. Like literally the entire
Yes.
film, he is always struggling with guilt and his humanity, which is such an interesting dichotomy because he's a fighter, but
Yes.
like an aggressive fighter. And so you're
Yes.
always just like, you have picked an interesting career in terms of, kind of being a priest when you struggle so heavily with the weight of guilt that it's like almost crippling for him, but also in on the converse side, like he's quite violent. So, it's really interesting. Like,
Well, so you've sort of dovetailed this perfectly into the plot of the film. So from a very high level, Benoit Blanc has once again found himself in another Agatha Christie style mystery, where he's has a slurry of suspects, and he's got to figure out who done it, and how it was done, I suppose. The story for anybody who's just listening to us talk about it and hasn't seen the movie yet, centers around a young reverend who is been put on assignment by the Catholic Church to be the assistant deacon to Monsignor Jefferson, played by Jefferson Wicks. Pardon me, Monsignor Wicks is mostly what they call him. Um, uh, Played by
which
Brolin.
they say his full name a lot. Like
They
it,
do. Monsignor Jefferson Wicks is what you called it. Well, and this is his whole thing. He's definitely gone off the reservation. I don't know that he is preaching a traditional form of Catholicism in this church. He's mostly kind of doing a cult thing and talking about how his mom stole the cross out this church, and doing a lot of like psychic warfare against O'Connor's character. And there's this sort of central group of people in this church that he has really sort of hardened to his cause, right? And anybody else who ever comes to the church, he sort of chastises and lambasts and lets have it until they leave. And then he points out that those people are weak and they're not devout followers of God. And all these people in this sort of calcified group become even more, stuck in their seat, forever, uh, unwilling to leave, or abandon him for anything, like we kind of discussed earlier. And that's really what the story's about, right? One day that guy dies mysteriously. Everybody seems to have a reason to hate him, more or less. And the question is, who did this locked door murder? And then, as they often do in these sorts of mysteries, as things go even more off the rails, who continued to murder people around town? I think that's kind of like the high level of the plot, KB. But do you have anything in there that you either thought was important to add on, or just anything that stuck out about you in this closed door mystery?
no, I mean, I do feel like, because he is so rude and arrogant. I think those are like the best words to use for him.
Yeah,
Um, in terms of like his approach for his sermons, but also just in how he moves with everyone he meets. It is the reason why he has like the largest target on his back. I mean, he is one of the most entitled characters probably we've seen in this franchise.
he's tough.
Um,
Yeah, he's
and
awful.
he's honestly a terrible human being. So you are constantly kind of questioning why he would have a flock to begin with. Like
Right.
why these individuals specifically feel so drawn and connected to him. And I think it really is Andrew Scott's character is an author, like a sci-fi fiction author, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Correct
Mm-hmm.
me if I'm wrong.
Nope,
And
that's
so
exactly right.
Lee is very much, I think, out of everyone, the one who is most blindly devoted to Monsieur Jefferson Wicks. Like, he is the one that, regardless of what happens, he's going to go for it. And it's like, he treats you all so poorly, but Lee actually he says, oh, but we need someone who's just going to tell us the truth. He was like,
Right.
I want to be amongst a community and congregation where we can tell each other hard things. And at the end of the day, still, be friends. And it's like, okay, but there's balance, like, which is why Josh's character is so interesting because he's like, we literally do not have to suffer through this man. Like, we can still get the truth, and you do not have to be essentially verbally abused by your priest. Like,
And the reaction that all these people have when he starts to try and, like, start a prayer circle so that they can just, like, have a meeting to talk without this guy, like, looming
yes,
over their every word, and they not only don't wanna be there without Wix's permission, but, like, they go running the minute they find out that he isn't looped in on the whole thing.
yeah, they're
Um,
brainwashed. They're
yeah.
essentially brainwashed
Oh,
because it
totally.
is a cult. It is a cult. I mean,
Did
but
you see Superman?
I did.
We haven't talked about it, but I assume you got into it. So, I remember after Superman came out, so many people comparing the dictator character in that movie. You know, there was a lot of conversation. Oh, was this like the Netanyahu? Was it like the Putin? Were we supposed to read this sort of military conflict as an Israeli-Palestinian thing? Were we supposed to read it as a Ukrainian-Russian thing? And I saw James Gunn make a comment afterwards where he kind of said, you know, my hope is sort of any person, no matter when you're watching this movie, that'll sort of read as the thing you're dealing with, right? That's just supposed to be the thing. And like it kind of looks like whatever the thing is that you're experiencing in your life, but it's just because those things are that shaped, right? Like you can kind of put any of those things onto that. And I kind of felt like the Wix character was kind of the same way, right? Where like there was sort of the immediate pull to be like, oh, he's a Trump analog, right? Like he's a stand-in for the one big kind of center of personal, you know, like the big charisma balloon in the room that lots of people kind of flock to. But really, this guy could be anybody, right? And it's not so important who he is. Like the point is that there's billions of these guys out there, and as you say, there's a conversation between uh, Sai's character and Wix, where Sai says like, "Hey, you've got 10 people in this town. This is a little town. Think of all the towns and cities in the world. If you could keep that, you know, conversion rate going, you're in business." And it is really sort of that level of thinking that I think has changed how a lot of American culture works right now, and is sort of the scary underpinning there, where he realizes I can be an asshole if this many people per capita are willing to jump on board with asshole priest Josh Brolin. Let's do it, baby.
Which is interesting because I do think one of the underlying commentaries of the film is the fact that Psy moves through the world like a white man,
Yes.
but he is a black man. And it literally never occurs to him that the reason why his political
Why it
career
didn't work.
is
Yeah.
not working is because he's black. Like you can tell that that is one of the things. And so it's almost as if when he even has an inkling of it, if he has an inkling of it, and he is talking to, you know, Monsieur Jefferson about, oh my gosh, you can totally do X, Y, and Z. It's
Yeah.
almost like finally in that moment, he's realizing, like, oh, I actually need a vessel. And that vessel needs to be a white man.
You can
And
be my
the
yes.
perfect opportunity, yes, for me to be able to kind of like maneuver, manipulate. I can be his chief of staff. I can do all of the, you know. So it's interesting because Cy craves power that, and he really craves the power that Monsieur Jefferson naturally has, right? Like, so he wants to be in that position. And so he's ultimately kind of taking notes, but also realizes that he can manipulate him a little bit into expanding if he wanted to.
When he said, what was the line? Uh, Reverend Jude advises Sai to sort of try and get back to basics after he's had his challenging political outing, and he says something to the effect of back to basics, like warning everybody that there's a scary thing coming to take away the thing you love. I was just like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, that
absolutely.
does feel like it's back to basics these days, doesn't it?
Back to basics.
But then he lists off all the things that he does his big long
Excited.
list,
He listed off every single thing, which
every
were
single thing.
everything he listed off were opposing also, and
Yeah,
he was
he
just
didn't care.
throwing
It
anything
didn't
in the fire.
matter.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
it is just sort of yeah this bottomless hole of oh I will just have power. That'll be the thing I do, and
Mhm.
we can figure out the details of it later. Some really challenging. I feel like satire gets harder the more life we live. It used to be that it could just be funny, and now it's like it's really
Yeah.
challenging to actually
Well,
sort of
now
think.
it's sad, right? Because
Right?
now
Yeah, we're not
they're
having a fun
taking
time laughing at
power.
these guys anymore.
Yeah, yeah. But we have not talked, I mean, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about, excuse me, Kaylee's performance
Oh my
as Selena.
gosh, yes.
And just, having this kind of mystery nerve disorder that causes her to have to use a chair, although she can walk. Which also, one of the screams in there is when Martha screams, "It's a miracle!"
I
She's like,
laughed so
"Martha, I
hard.
can walk." Like,
Uh,
girl, I'm like, I can walk. I have been able to walk this entire
but that was
time.
when we found that out, right? I mean,
Right,
that's when
right.
the okay, I wanted to make because I really kind of lost it. I thought that was a nice reveal, but then I was worried that I had just missed something fundamentally in
You're
the
like,
movie.
"Wait a minute, it is
We
a miracle." And
Yeah,
she's like,
right,
"No,
yeah, Martha and I were
absolutely
both, "Praise
not.
be, she can walk."
It's absolutely not a miracle." I
No.
think it's interesting because Simone's character provides a layer of depth that almost reveals that Monsieur Jefferson is also a thief, right?
Yes. Well, that's yes,
And
really.
when she's like, "I gave you my life savings because you said that you could heal me." He's like, "I never said that. I
Right.
said you needed to have more
I didn't
faith."
make any promises.
Right.
Yeah. That's
Praying,
cold. That's
praying. I mean,
cold.
that was probably for me, I think there are a lot of moments where he is unfavorable, like,
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
and he says a lot of unsavory things, but I think that was the moment where you realize that he essentially preyed on her lack of faith
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
stole her money. I was like, "Wow."
And, you know, we don't have to get too open about our personal lives on Mania or anything. I'm gonna do a real quick drive by of this. I think that is sort of what makes this movie interesting, right? Like as a person, one of the things that I have struggled with over the course of my whole life is how I think, the great Eddie Izzard quote, Eddie Nay Sue Izzard quote of like, um, the Bible is a book with some really good ideas and some really fucking weird ones in it. And like, I do like the really good ideas. And I think that like the more we could see the good ideas applied, the better the world would be. But also, there's some really weird ideas in there. And I feel like oftentimes the people with power are more interested in enforcing the weird ideas than the good ideas. And so many of these characters, like the way that they intersect with their priest, right, is through these sorts of weird ideas or these manipulations of power, right? Like the doctor's, dependence on drink and his depression after being left by his wife, like a perfect situation for a priest to like step in and help him, right? A woman who is plagued by a mysterious illness that she doesn't understand and like doesn't see a way through. Again, a perfect opportunity for religion to be helpful and to like give you something to hold on to. Kind of the argument that Josh O'Connor's character is making in the whole movie, but he's Brolin's just like taking advantage of all of them. He's like one at a time, systematically broken them down, isolated them, made them feel hurt, made them feel alone, and then made him feel like he's the only one that can take care of it. And I think that when this movie is like the most powerful is when Josh O'Connor just gets to be a priest, right? When he just gets to be like there for
The
Bridget
woman on
Everett on the
the
phone. Oh
phone.
my
Mhm,
god, that was so good. That was so
mhm.
powerful. And the little moments like that I think are so sweet, and I like those a lot. We haven't mentioned that those things kind of come up.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, not to have too much of an aside, but obviously in all religions, they're mostly led by human beings, right? Like they're mostly
Traditionally,
led
yeah,
by men
mostly.
traditionally. So
Occasionally animals, but mostly humans. Yeah,
occasionally, right. And so I think that there's always an undercurrent of manipulation that can
yeah,
and often does happen. So
yeah.
I think that like that is what's really being explored here in depth is, when people have lost all hope, that's when a cult leader shines, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, you've lost all hope, so like, I'm going to manipulate you into thinking that I can help solve this issue. So I'll bring up something that is very similar, also on Netflix. There is a television series. Please, help me because I'm drawing a
Okay.
blank. It just
Oh,
came out. It's Canadian.
is it about
And
cults?
it is. My
Is it?
gosh,
Is it? It's not like the twin flame one, is it?
no, oh my gosh, what is this called? Like, unfortunately, I'm trying to, like, do a quick search on my computer because I'm like, "I can't believe I'm drawing this blank right now." But it also premiered at TIFF, so I saw it,
Oh.
at the same time. Wayward Pines. I finally got it in my brain. Wow. Wayward is the title of the series, but it's about Wayward Pines, right? And so it's
Mm.
almost like a cultish scenario, but with wayward children.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a lot of the same themes, right? There is a woman in this, played by Toni Collette, who also happens to be my birthday twin. And
Oh.
so Toni Collette, she is essentially Monsieur Jefferson, right? Like they're basically the same character. People have
Mm,
lost all hope and they've come to her for a thing and she manipulates them so boldly that like the only thing that can happen is murder. Like essentially,
mm.
right? Like the
Right,
only way
right.
to get from out of it or from under it is murder. The only difference between that show, which I absolutely love and I definitely recommend that people watch that series. The only difference is that the people who recognize that she has a hold on them still end up electing a new cult leader because they don't know how to be independent of the system.
Very good. I like that a lot. I might have to
And
go check
so
that out this
yeah,
weekend.
like you have to be able to watch through that lens. And it's interesting because I do feel like in a sense, that's what happens at the end of this film a little bit, right?
It's
Like
interesting.
we just get someone new who is
Yeah.
in power and you're constantly asking yourself now at the end of this, that person does the right thing, but how long does it
But how
last?
long
That
does that last without, like, a system or something to hold them accountable if we're
right,
just counting on the charisma of one leader, you
right,
know? When does
right.
that turn? Yeah.
So I think that those are both interesting dichotomies. And since they're on the same streaming platform, I wanted to kind of bring it up because, one very clearly shows what happens and the level of manipulation that occurs in a second leader that emerges. Whereas this one kind of leaves you to your own thoughts after and trying to figure out, like, again, like you said, how long can this kind of one person go without having a certain level of accountability. And we already, I mean, of course, that we see Psy spiral and we know it's not going to be him. I mean, like, there's no point in this film where you think Psy will ever do the right thing.
Right, no.
And I appreciate that he is consistent in all forms. So
Yes, yeah. He's just always kind of gonna be second banana.
100%.
KB, thank you so much again for being here. We'll remind everybody in case they don't know, at the Lady KB on Twitter,
On
youtube.com/at the Lady KB. Anything else you want to plug before we get out of here?
no, not beyond Wayward. I do think that like watching this and maybe watching Wayward, I mean Wayward is a television series, so it's a bit more of a commitment in terms of time wise. But I think making them a double feature could be very interesting for some people because I think that more people need to watch Wayward and everyone should check out Wake Up Dead Man just because one, it's the third one, but also because it is compelling. I mean, I do think that like it's enjoyable, it's compelling,
Absolutely.
and Brian definitely sets everything up. In my opinion, I find that like even at the end of the film, I'm already like, which Agatha Christie will we dive into for the fourth one?
Yes, yes, yeah, absolutely. I keep finding myself so delighted that we just keep having more of these. I rewatched Knives Out the other night, just kind of getting ready for the new one, and I remembered being like, oh, wouldn't it be fun if we got more of these? That would be so delightful. And now it seems like we'll get as many as he wants to make. That's so fun.
And maybe those sweaters too. The first one, that's literally like the thing I
The
remember
cable
most.
net is a big, yeah. There's
Sweater.
huge Efron energy in that first movie.
It was great. And then, of course, I'm not even gonna lie. In the second one, it was all of Janelle Monáe's outfits for me. I mean, I mostly was just marveling at the
I
costuming.
Yes, yes.
Like,
The costuming was very, very good. I was also